It is great to be able to be here with you all today. Good morning. Yeah, I love it. I tell you, the last couple of days have actually been really good. We've been at a district conference, and it's funny to say that. So you think if you're going to be in a business meeting for 2 days, up really early, all the way through, you think it would be really boring. I mean, the truth is, it's hours and hours of business. Now, here's the thing that's cool. Coming from the independent Christian church back into the Wesleyan system, accountability is a great thing. And so as I was listening to the reports even over the last couple of days, it's so cool that we have wonderful accountability within our system. And then the second thing that was really awesome over the last couple of days, we had a pastor, Alex, from Mexico City come and share with the pastors. And man, it was incredible. Like, this guy he really rung my bell in a good way. And I ran him down. So Multiplying Church, Mexico City, great things are happening down there. I run him down and I grab him and I talk with him a little bit. Then I asked him to pray over me. And I've done this a number of different times at conferences. This is maybe kind of weird, I don't know. I like to run down some of the speakers, especially if they really touch my heart, and just have a quick conversation with them and ask them to pray over me. I've done this with a number of different guys over the years. And so I ran him down, talking with him. I said, pray over me. Just pray over me and the ministry and the guys that I get to work with, that God would just move in a significant way. And so I bend over and I reach and put my hand around him, and he starts to pray. Okay, so this is what he prays. You ready? Lord, the answer to a movement taking off is not another battle plan, and he called it whiteboard strategy. He said the answer to a movement taking off is people just finally obeying what Jesus asked them to do. The secret to a movement taking off isn't another whiteboard strategy, a new battle plan. It's just being faithful to what God has actually called us to do. So this is what he prays. He says, I pray, even over this pastor. He didn't even know my name. That's fine. And so he's praying, I pray over this pastor. I pray over the people that he's ministering to and his team. I pray that they would actually go, and this is what he said. Now, this is going to really ring true with us because we've talked about it a lot over the last couple of months. I pray that they would actually go out and have spiritual conversations and make disciples. I pray that that would actually happen. It's really hard for a church to do something that its leaders won't do, right? It's really hard to do that. So amazing time. We get finished and I'm walking back and I'm just kind of going over in my mind, even thinking about the sermon this coming Sunday that I'm sharing with you today here, and how incredibly imperative it is that we don't just observe Christianity from the grandstands and be fans of the wonderful protagonist, Jesus Christ, but we actually engage missionally and we are obedient to what he's called us to do. Okay, so here's the big idea for today. Your first disciples, all right, we're going to begin here. Your first disciples are your family. They're your family. They're your family. Like, our job is to begin discipleship even within our own home as believers. We do not abdicate that responsibility. And though Sunday school teachers are awesome and youth pastors are awesome, and I did youth ministry for a long time, loved being a youth pastor, we do not walk away from that responsibility to have spiritual conversations even within our own home. Your first disciples are your children. They're your children. Now, this begs a really important question that we need to think through, and it's this. What exactly are we supposed to do in discipleship? What exactly are we supposed to do in discipleship? Over the last couple of weeks, those of you that know me know I like to read. I like just to continually take in information. It's fun. And so I've been reading. I stumbled across a book. I've actually been really curious about Old Testament, studying more and more in the Old Testament. For those that are in ministry, both my undergraduate and graduate school, most of our schools are so heavily Greek-focused. So it's all like New Testament, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I do feel like even within my own life, my knowledge and understanding of the Old Testament is pretty weak, relatively speaking. Now, yes, I took classes on Mesopotamian culture and, Hebrew prophetic literature, and I took all those, wonderful classes that are required in undergrad for pastoral ministry and seminary. But still, comparatively to the New Testament, I don't feel like I understand a lot of it. So I got into a group with Dr. Chad Carmichael. He's a PhD metaphysics prof at IUPUI, and Dan Levite, and we started reading through the works of Dr. Michael Hesser, okay? So those of you that don't know him, that's okay. He is a Mesopotamian, guy. So those cultures, Old Testament, what does it mean? He looks at the Old Testament through the eyes of that historical culture. And he basically says this. This is really interesting. He says, the primary job throughout all of the Bible as a believer, as we relate to God, so Old Testament, New Testament, all the way through is this. He said, it is to establish a right order of loyalties. That's it. That's the primary job. The meta objective, the main idea from Old Testament all the way through to New Testament is to establish a right order of loyalties. So I finished Dr. Hesser's work, and we actually ended it at Chad's house. So we're hanging out at Chad's house, and we're going through the idea. Actually, we spent a couple of hours talking about Elohim in the Old Testament, non-corporeal sentient beings, and how they relate to just super nerdy stuff. You don't care about it, that's okay. And as we were working through this, I kind of put that aside, because after a while, if you've read through like a lot of nerdy things, it's kind of nice to set that aside and then kind of like re-wet your palate with something a little lighter. So I got into Lord Falgren's letters. Anybody here ever read Lord Falgren's letters? One. That's great. Actually, when I was talking about this last week at the other campus, 3 services, I only had 2 hands go up too. So all those people, that's all right, that's fine. Lord Falgren's letters is basically a new version of C.S. Lewis's Screw Tape letters. Like, he continues the story. Randy Alcorn. You may have read some of his other books. And as I'm reading through Alcorn's work, he basically says this. He says that what we are evaluating, what we do, are loyalties. So loyalties matter. And in this conversation between a demon, this is the kind of the meta story of Lord Falgren's letters. It is an adult, older demon mentoring a younger demon on how to lead people astray. That's the whole book, is this story played out. So you're reading these letters of an older demon mentoring a younger demon. Of course, it's a made-up story on how to lead people astray. And one of the main ideas that he pushes on this Christian guy is he says, you have to keep him obsessed with asking the question, what deserves my loyalty, without ever leading him to the place where he's asking the question, what am I actually loyal to? In fact, this is how he says it. He says, what we must do is keep people at the place where we are evaluating what deserves our loyalty without ever wrestling with what we are supposed to be loyal to. It's important, he says to this young demon, that you do not let Christians actually think about what am I going to commit myself to, and you keep always before them, do things deserve my commitment? You are teaching your children, I am teaching my children to establish loyalties in life just by doing life. This is interesting. Are you teaching your children, I'm going to say it like this, are you teaching your children to be aware of what they are loyal to, or just teaching them to evaluate what is loyal to them? As I was going through this book and thinking about it in light of Dr. Hesser's work, and then looking at Lord Falgren's letters, kind of this fun story, all of a sudden it hits me. Even in my own home as a parent, I am teaching my children to be obsessed with what deserves our loyalty without really challenging what are they going to be loyal to. Even funny things. Like, what churches are we going to be a part of? You mean, now I'm a pastor, right? So like, I got to be committed to this one, right? But even what churches are we going to be a part of? I mean, it's almost like in my home, I'm an overthinker a little bit. So it's like gather the family around and, get up by a whiteboard and write out advantages and disadvantages and what's good about this and what's bad about this. And we're always kind of weighing. And so do you think that this youth pastor, what do you think he's really about? And what do you think? We're always weighing, always evaluating, always teaching my children to look out and ask the question, do they deserve my loyalty? Does the youth program, does the church, does the school, does my job, do they deserve my loyalty? Always asking that question. Without spending nearly as much time asking the question of my children, what are we going to be fully committed to? I am not asking today if you think Christ-centered priorities deserve your loyalty. Okay, now hear me clearly. Obviously, as a pastor, I do believe that Christ deserves our loyalty. And for whatever reason, if you're here today and you are not a Christian or you're wrestling with faith, I dare you, I challenge you to weigh the claims of Christ. I believe he does fully deserve our loyalty. His ways, his nature, what makes him who he is the greatest hope for humanity. I fully believe this. But today, what I want to focus on is this. Not so much does Christ, but I want to ask this question. I'm asking you to evaluate, not does he deserve it, I'm asking you to question yourself, am I actually committed to him? Not does he deserve it, though he does, are you actually committed to him? Let me ask some questions. And I guarantee this will probably be offensive. That's okay. I don't mind offending people here and there. Here's some really tactful things you can ask. I mean, maybe the best way to evaluate how you've established loyalties in your own home is to ask your children and family questions about loyalties and how they observe them. All right, so here's some easy ones, all right, that are hard to work through, but easy to think about, right? So in our home, my home, we are a sports family. I have a son that's a football player. I have a daughter that's a soccer player. I have another son who's really involved in other school activities, jazz band, the whole works. I mean, we are a really busy family in all of our activities, okay? So we try to make it all happen. We're going to practices. We're going to do our best at practices. We're going to try really hard. We're going to go to soccer. We're going to try to do the extra things that my daughter needs to do to really thrive in soccer. What if I was to sit down with my family, gather them around the table, and ask just this question? Kids, as you examine, as you look at us, as you look at Dad, I mean, what we are going to make sure that we're never late to, what we're going to make sure that we give our energy, time, effort, what we're going to really cheer. When you look at our families, I want to ask you this question. Are we, from what you see in us, are we more committed to sports than to Christ? Are we? I mean, as you examine your dad, what your dad gets excited about, what he chooses to I'm never going to be late. You got to get to sports. You got to be on time. Church, I mean, you know, it's cool. We'll stop at Starbucks. We'll stop somewhere else, get a sandwich. It's okay. I mean, it's all right. We'll take our time. We'll roll in, whatever, right? But when you examine us, what are the things that we are going to make sure that we will never be late for, that we're going to really try hard at? As you examine our home and our life, what do you think our greatest loyalties are to? It's one question you could ask. That's a dangerous question. Here's another one. As you examine what you are actually discipling into your family, another one might be this. Are you just as strategic with your finances in generosity as you are with your finances in getting stuff that you want? Here's the example. In our home, even right now in our home, it's like, you know, if we need to get a new car. It's like, hey, kids, we got to buckle down. We're not going to go out to eat tonight. We got to save money. We're trying to get money put into things that we want. Have you ever sat down with your family and gone, hey, kids, you know, we've got to really buckle down. We're going to be real tight. We're going to save as much as we can because we really got to put a well in the middle of Africa in a community that has no clean water. I mean, what are you modeling to your children as actual loyalty? Because you are discipling them into something. And many of us, even within the church, you say you love Jesus, but you model that your loyalty is to you and your hobbies. And then we're confused when our kids grow up making those things first. But the truth is, they've just done what they've seen. They've just done what they've seen. See, the war isn't just over your hearts, mom and dad, people sitting in this room. The war is over the hearts of the people that call you mom and dad. I want to go to the text this morning that we're going to spend our lion's share of our time on. It's Acts 14, 1 through 2. It says this. Starting in verse 1, Acts 14, starting in verse 1. Now at Iconium, they entered together into the Jewish synagogue and spoke in such a way that a great number of both Jews and Greeks believed. But the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brothers. I want to pause here for just a moment. this idea many begin to believe. Literally, there's a loyalty shift to Christ. Now, I was talking about this with a couple of my friends that are scholars, just rehashing some of the meta concepts that we find within the Bible. And it's really hard. Translation stuff is really difficult because every time you approach a piece of the Bible, you see it through your cultural lens. But it was written through a different cultural lens than modern American, right? So I want to talk about this whole idea of what it means to become a believer. In our modern day, and I get it, I get to write for a couple of newspapers, so I have people write in all the time, and in the last couple of weeks, I've actually been going back and forth with some guys that are non-believers in our community, and it's fun to get to do. And what happens is when most people go, all right, I believe in Jesus, what they mean in our culture is, I'm down with the dude, right? Like, Jesus is my homie. I like him. He's a nice guy. He does good things. He would be good for our culture. I believe in the person Jesus. But in that day and age, belief wasn't only that. In our home, we have 3 kids, Noah, Nathan, and Emma, and then we have a 7.5-year gap somewhere in there. And then we have a brand new baby. Well, she's not brand new anymore. She's a little over a year old, and she is just now starting to learn to walk. And it's fun, man. I love this. So in our home, even yesterday we were doing this. You know, my wife had baby Kara, and we're hanging onto her hands, and she's like this. She grabs onto Mama's fingers, and she leans way far forward, which isn't good for balance, but hey, we're working on it, right? And the other 3 learn to walk. We're going to get there with this one. And so leaning forward, and what she does is she has like these, it's like kind of figuring out what to do with her feet as she takes steps. But in this idea of following Jesus and becoming a believer, it's not so much saying, yes, I'm down with people that walk. It's getting up and saying, in the way of Christ, I'm going to learn to view finances the way Jesus views finances. As we follow the ways of Christ and hang on to God and learn to walk, I'm going to learn to view the poor the way Jesus views the poor, and we learn to walk in the ways of Jesus. So becoming a believer, literally, the present imperative, this learning process is not a one-time thing, it's a continual idea in the text. So you are learning every day what it means to view money through the lens of Jesus Christ and the way He views it, to view the poor the way Jesus views the poor, to view discipleship the way Jesus views discipleship, you are learning to walk in the ways of Jesus. And for most of us, what we tactically do is go, I am down with Jesus, but I view finances the way Americans do. I'm down with Jesus, I like the guy, but I view the poor the way Fox News, any news organization does. I'm down with Jesus, but I view and we choose to not walk in the ways of Christ. We are fans of Christ, but we're learning to walk not like Jesus. And you are modeling to your children how to walk. So you may say, I love Christ. You may say Jesus matters, but you're showing them sports and soccer and football matter more. You are showing them that boat matters more than a well of water for the poor people that have no clean water. You are actually teaching them to not walk in the ways of Jesus, all while you say you are. And Michael Hesser says, all the way back from the Old Testament on, it is about your loyalties. Literally, the way in which you walk your life that actually determines your relationship with God. Now, you got to juxtapose this with the main ideas in the Bible, right? Faith is not based on works so that no man can boast, but faith without works is, right, juxtapose concepts in the text. They both must exist. Acts 14, 3-7, let's continue here. So they remained for a long time, speaking boldly for the Lord, who bore witness to the word of His grace, granting signs and wonders to be done by their hands. I'm going to invite Kristen up, and we're going to be done in just a few minutes here. But the people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jews, and some with the apostles. When an attempt was made by both Gentiles and Jews with their rulers to mistreat them, to stone them, they learned of it and fled to Lystra and Derbe and Lycaonia and to the surrounding country. And there they continued to preach the gospel. And a couple things are really important from this. You see in this in the very beginning, the launching center, this is the epicenter, the beginning of the church age in Acts. You are watching this movement start that is going to reshape the story of humanity. Billions of humans through history are going to be changed by these stories and this journey happening right before us. Billions with a B. The history of humanity is being rewritten in this story that's being played out in front of you today. And the way it's being played out is these people go into communities and cultures and they establish a new way of doing life. Not just a new view of the way, meaning I like Jesus, he's a nice guy, but literally a new way of walking. And they are fully committed to establishing this in communities. Now, notice what happens here. This is important. When things go bad, they commit to stay. What happens in the war over their loyalty? They commit to stay. They commit to engage and model commitment to Christ. Now, notice this. It literally says in the text, they remain for a long time. I don't know how long a long time is. Is it months? And while they're there, they're literally showing people what Christ values. This is how you walk in the ways of Jesus. You walk in the ways of Jesus. You walk in the ways of Jesus. Are you walking in the ways of Jesus? If you were to sit down with your kids and ask them, kids, I want to ask you, what do you think mom and dad are most loyal to? They may say what they've been taught to say, Jesus. Then ask it again. Come back again and go, when you look at the things that we always make priority for, when you see your dad get really excited about stuff, when you examine and you watch your parents and where they work really hard, what they work really hard to save money for, let me ask the question again. What do you think mom and dad are most loyal to? That's a scary question. This last Sunday, I asked our church over on Allisonville Road the same question. The 3 services, hundreds of people, right? And all week long, I got conversation. People were getting a hold of me. Man, Pastor Mike, I never thought about it like that. Pastor Mike, in our home, literally my kids are going, we're most committed to soccer. Pastor Mike, I never thought about it. In our home, my kids are saying, wow, we really are most committed to, just straight down the list. This awareness is like somebody holds up, the Bible holds up a mirror where you actually get to examine the true condition of the type of discipleship that you're laying in place. When things go bad, they commit to stay. Now here's the next piece of this. If you live only evaluating if people deserve your loyalty, you will find reasons that they don't. If you live asking the question, do people deserve my loyalty, you will find reasons that they don't. If you live after years of counseling and started doing ministry in the fall of 99, people coming in, if you look for reasons that your wife doesn't deserve your loyalty, you're going to find it. We're flawed, broken people. And so in even Lord Falgrim's letter, so we have the scholar, Hesser, and his work, and then I'm reading this fun story, and it contains the same idea, right, all the way through. And basically what you have in this story is the demon, the older demon, telling this guy, what you got to do to mess up Christians is this. Don't let them think about what they should be committed to. Make them be very aware of what they think deserves their commitment or loyalties. So when this guy walks into a church, the first thing you need to whisper in his ear is, the music's too loud. The parking wasn't done right. I don't like, this is wrong. Get them questioning. Get them asking the questions. So by the time they come into the service, they already have a chip on their shoulder going, they don't deserve my loyalty. You have to, the older demon is saying to the younger demon, you must establish this in the Christian's heart to keep them from actually being Christian. So I finished both those books, and I had another friend of mine tell me, man, you know what? Have you ever read The Bait of Satan by John Bevere? Have anybody here ever read that? Oh, it's an interesting book, man. You got to check it out if you haven't. As funny as it is, it's a pretty popular book. I never read it. So I picked it up, and in a couple days just buzzed through the whole thing. And it's so interesting to me because it carries the same idea. Your bitterness, your obsession with what you deserve, you may be actually discipling that into the people you're around. All while you say, I love Jesus. Okay. Now in the text, this gets interesting, but the people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jews and some with the apostles. So in their loyalty to represent Christ well and their loyalty to do it, it doesn't go nearly as good as they would like it to. So you're fighting with your wife, and it's been a bad couple of weeks, and you hear this, and you think, man, I'm going to go home, and I'm going to honor God in my home with my family. And you go, and you walk in, you sit down with your wife, and you go, man, I'm just really sorry. I just really want God to work in our hearts. And she doesn't respond the way you wish she would. You're in good company. So you fall out with a friend, or you go to your neighbor that you know you need to share your faith with and have a conversation, and you're going, man, this would be so awesome. I'd love to walk into this and talk about my faith and Christianity. And you have this spiritual conversation, and in your mind you play it out like the person goes, oh my goodness, that's exactly what I need, and they fall before God. And instead it goes bad. You're in good company. But the people of the city were divided. Some sided with the Jews, some with the apostles, when an attempt was made by both Gentiles and Jews with the rulers to mistreat them. So it goes bad. And then to stone them, they learned of it and fled to Lystra and Derbe and Lycaonia and the surrounding country. And there they continued to preach the gospel. Now, this is really important. They are committed to their mission. They are committed to be faithful to what God has asked them to do, independent of whether it always goes well. When I was about, maybe in like 7th, 8th grade, I was still pretty young. I went through a season where I was just really annoyed with Christianity. I got tired of the rules. I got tired of the don't wear this and have your hair a certain length and you can't ever go to dances. And so I just I'm going to it all. I'm going to wear my hair the way I want. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And this kind of like looking at the holiness movement and going, don't care. And my shield of opposition to fight against it was the word legalism. So I just threw out legalism all the time. It's like my parents would be like, you know what, it really is wise. And I'd be like, you're just legalists. That was my trump card I'd always throw out. Legalist. But what was really off was my heart. I had 2 friends of mine that I had become pretty close with. They were non-Christians, James and Dave. And my parents are trying to continually win my heart over, they're working with me like any good parent would do. And it became pretty clear they weren't gaining the ground they wanted. And I was gaining all this influence from these other guys. So my parents did something really funny. I ran them out of the city of my heart. And my parents went to the surrounding communities and worked there. I came home one day and Dave was over for dinner at my house. And I'm like, what's up, Dave? And my parents started inviting him over. He ate with us many times. They had conversations. My parents would talk about who they are, what they're doing. And the whole time I'm pushing against Christianity, my parents are winning them over. James is a pastor today. Dave is a Sunday school teacher who also does counseling for couples that are in marital stress. both passionate followers of Jesus. And my parents literally went to the surrounding community. They didn't walk away. If the question was, do my parents deserve my loyalty? I mean, am I being a good kid? Am I treating them right? It's not about that. It's in their mind and in their heart, they had made a commitment to say, we will not walk away from what we know God has called us to be loyal to. And one of those is rearing our kids. We are going to do everything that we possibly can to raise him in the ways in nature, literally walk in the ways of Christ. They go to the surrounding communities. When the surrounding community's over, ends up winning my heart back over, and I'm a pastor today too. If you live evaluating, if people deserve your loyalty, you will find reasons that they don't. You will find a reason to quit your small group, to quit your church, to walk out on your spouse. You will find a reason to give up if you are looking for it. And here's why. Because all humans are flawed. Even the view of the person that's looking for their perspective to be right? See that? We all are. If you're looking for a reason to walk away, you will find it. Now, here's the other part of this. If you were to spend your energy figuring out ways to live Christ-centered loyalty, you may change the tide of the spiritual war that is raging on. Are you teaching your children to be aware? Here we go. Are you ready? God, by your grace, I pray over the next minute and a half, 2 minutes, that what is of you would settle deep into the hearts of the people that are here, and that it would produce a crop, a movement of people that desire to walk in your ways. I ask this, Jesus. Are you teaching your children to be aware of what they are loyal to, or just modeling an attitude of evaluating if things deserve your loyalty? Let me say this again. Now, you got to really listen to this. You think. Are you teaching your children to be aware of what they are loyal to, or just modeling an attitude of evaluating everything and if it deserves your loyalty? All right, let me say it like this. I am not asking today if you think Christ-centered priorities deserve your loyalty, though you need to wrestle with that, and it's very important. I'm taking it to the next step in this message. I am asking those that have committed to Christ, if you are committed in a way the people you love can see it. So I'm driving down the road with my children on our way to vacation when I was writing this a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just kind of thinking this through in my mind. So we were watching a movie, so I turned off the movie, I kind of paused everything, right? And I turned around and I asked my own kids the question. When you look at your dad, I would say look at mom, but she already has it all right. So I had to work on the part that's actually broken, right? When you look at your dad and you listen to the things that I get excited about, and you look at what your dad likes to spend money on, and you look at what your dad talks about spending money on, and you listen to your dad, and when he says, all right, guys, we got to go, we can't be late, or when dad says, you got to try, when you listen to the things, the actual walking of dad, what he is actually walking in, when you do this, my question to you kids is, what do you think daddy is actually most committed to? Even a 10-year-old can break your heart. Luckily, in the conversation, there were a few good things tossed in there. But it also became really apparent that I need to be more intentional about walking in the ways of Jesus in a way that they see. We just want to thank you for watching the sermon online. If God is working in your heart, we would love to hear about it. You can go online, www.encountertrinity.com/nextstepscard. You can fill out information there. Let us know what God is doing in your heart. If you need help with anything, we would love to help. Counseling, we would love to do anything that we can to help you go to that next level.